All right, well, good morning, divas and dudes. It's so nice to have you here in Powerhouse Bakery. We are winding down our kind of celebration theme of our wonderful Oh My Pie season, and last week we did the vegan cinnamon roll. And so this week, what I wanted to do is have our beautiful Heidi back, and we are going to showcase a sugar-free cinnamon roll. And you know that when we are trying to live the anti-cancer way of life, and we're trying to make sure that we eat as healthy as we can, sugar is one of those ingredients that we sort of put the bullseye on and say we want to get it out as much as we can. Even in the holidays, it's going to be important for some folks, especially those that have maybe a real erratic blood sugar, like if they have diabetes, or if they're just in a journey of cutting out all sugar, what would be the option? And so especially at a time of celebration, we want to encourage everybody to be a part of the table. And so the cinnamon rolls that we're going to make today are going to show you exactly what that would look like using non-nutritive sweeteners. And you know that in general, non-nutritive sweeteners are not my favorite. But I think what's important to remember is that there's always going to be a priority scale that we have to look at. Sometimes it's worth taking out sugar to avoid something that is acute issue. So elevated blood sugar is definitely an acute situation that we want to try to avoid. And during the holidays, when there's so many things to choose from, it's kind of good to have a couple of sugar-free options on the table, so that in the world of, kind of celebration and perhaps overeating, you have one thing that you feel like is going to help mitigate some of the risk of excess overeating and excess sugar. Because remember that sugar in itself is not such a huge culprit. Of course, we can pick the very healthiest sugars and minimize the risk of getting potential carcinogens in the way that sugar is processed, the way that it's grown, bleaching agents and non-organic growing practices. But in general, sugar is not the devil in disguise. Sugar is really the simple a component of a carbohydrate. So when we eat a diet that's rich in plant foods, it's rich in carbohydrates. And it gets confusing because sometimes we think that sugar is so horrible for us when it's really the building block of complex carbohydrates. Granted, in a complex carbohydrate, we do get a lot more ingredients. We get all the vitamins and the fiber and the protein that goes along with it. But I just want to make sure that we know that sugar in itself is not poison, except when we have it in excessive quantities and the quality is so poor that now it's displacing some of the really important ingredients. But all that suffice to say that it's still really good to have a sugar-free alternative. So hopefully you loved last week's cinnamon roll. And now we're just going to switch gears and have our beautiful Heidi walk us through how we make a vegan cinnamon roll that's turned into a keto cinnamon roll. And of course the ingredients really change. So as I bring these over, I'm going to have Heidi kind of walk us through what each of these ingredients are. Yeah, so we've got all the dry ingredients coming. So Heidi, tell us about these two different flours.
Okay, so our two main flour types that we have for this recipe, we are using a lot of almond flour, which is great because it's high in protein and fiber and low in carbs. And then we have our yummy, moist coconut flour. It's not as high in protein, but it'll make for a really moist, rich dough.
And it is high in protein when you compare it to others, right?
I guess compared to almonds.
Yes,
but you're right.
I love it. That's very true. And what's this one?
This is ground flaxseed, so flaxseed meal. It's very high in
minerals,
healthy fats,
yes.
Minerals, protein and fiber.
Yes.
I think it could even be called one of those like superfoods.
It is a superfood, which is why we put flax in our Mighty Seed Blend. So remember at Powerhouse Bakery, our goal was to make super healthy ingredients pop up in almost everything we make. So the Mighty Seeds are chia, hemp hearts, and flax. And so true to form, even in a cinnamon roll, we are boosting the nutrient quality with the flax.
For sure. We have just a little bit of xanthan gum. If you guys remember from last week, it's a great binding agent. It helps just bind everything together. We have just a little bit of salt, not a whole lot. This is going to make a giant batch, and there's only this much salt in the whole thing. And then we have some plain Greek yogurt, so no vanilla, no sugar, just plain Greek yogurt. So that's high in protein. We have some vanilla extract to give it that yummy vanilla goodness flavor.
And let's talk a little bit about that. This is a very unusual texture. It looks like it's a gel. Do you know how this is made?
I do not know how that one is made.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So vanilla extract is really from a bean. So we can have it in an oil base or we can have it in an alcohol base. And this one is really in a gel base. And so it's cool that, we can get this wonderful vanilla bean extract in a richer form. It's easier to blend because it's in a gel form. So it's in a kind of a solution of an oligosaccharide versus if you buy vanilla extract, it's a tiny little vial and it's in an alcohol base. And so, when you cook down the vanilla bean and you get all the pulp from the inside, it's really then slightly dehydrated and then rehydrated with an alcohol base when you buy it as the extract. This one is in an oligosaccharide. So I just love the fact that it has a wonderful aroma and it's a great medium to work with. Yeah, so anything else? Oh, the eggs we didn't talk about.
The eggs and then that butter, the water, and the rest of the ingredients.
Yes, I know, right? All the rest.
And we have a lot of eggs here. For this huge batch, again, you would want to probably take it down at home, but there's 12 eggs with all of this.
And we're going to give you, again, another recipe. This one happens to be all in grams. And so really the focus of today's class is to think about the ingredients, and then we're going to do a nutritional comparison when I flip this around. But we'll give you a recipe that's easy to work with.
And our leavening agent for this dough is baking powder. So this is not a yeast dough like our vegan cinnamon rolls. Leavened with baking powder. And we have some apple cider vinegar.
And what does that do for the recipe?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
It actually activates the baking powder and the
it's an acid.
Right, the acid that's in the Greek yogurt. So it's a really nice way, because remember when you're dealing with flours that don't have naturally occurring gluten, it's a lot harder to get the consistency right. So apple cider vinegar becomes a really great ingredient. It's in a lot of our items.
And then, of course, butter.
Woohoo!
Real meal butter.
So this one is definitely not vegan. What makes it non-vegan? Anybody want to guess? Other than the butter that we just said, the eggs, and of course the Greek yogurt. So this particular recipe couldn't easily become vegan because of what the eggs are doing to the structure of the recipe. But when we look at all these ingredients, these are so healthy. And so it wouldn't take much trial and error to see what we could put in place of the eggs. Now just, my brain, I always love to imagine what if, because we want to take something from good to great, what if we wanted to take out some of these products and replace them? We know that a flax egg will sometimes give it the structure. And so I bet we could play around with this a little bit and get something very similar if we needed to make it egg-free, or of course dairy-free is an easy one because we have an easy cross over, right? We could use a vegan butter or we could use a vegan yogurt. So those definitely are giving us alternatives, but sometimes the science around it makes us have to think about, the what ifs. All right, let's blend everything together. Oh, we haven't talked about yes.
The not so sugary.
Right? So we go round and round about which one is going to be better. And I love that Heidi brought this one up because this is actually a mix of a brown sugar alternative and then a white sugar alternative. And, here at the bakery, we go through a lot of this when we make our our keto items. So this is actually the swerve, which we have used in another couple of the other recipes. So we've got swerve in the sugar form and then the brown sugar form. So yeah, it's going to be a fun one. We've had great luck with it. I think it has a really good flavor. And kind of as a side to all that, I wanted you to see some of the other sugars that are on the market. So this HEB brand is kind of a blend. Again, it's a 0-calorie sweetener blend, so it tells you right on the top. Most of these are going to be a blend of erythritol and allulose. So anytime a non-nutritive sweetener ends in OL, erythritol, is a sugar alcohol. And again, the chemistry around that is good, that it gives us a very similar flavor of a sugar. The downside is sometimes that alcohol doesn't agree with our tummies. And I know I've mentioned that before. So, something just to be aware of. Not everybody has a problem with it, especially in small doses, which is always, I think, the best rule. This one also has erythritol. This one also has prebiotic oligosaccharides. That's a mouthful. Prebiotic oligosaccharides. Breaking down that word, it means that there is some carbohydrates that are going to be a prebiotic. So it's going to help the gut build some probiotics, which is really the nutrients that feed the bacteria. So undigested sugars is another way to say that, a prebiotic oligosaccharide. Again, some people don't have any problems. It does give it a really nice texture and, of course, the flavor profile. Some of the other ones are this one, which is it's going to be called monk fruit. And again, it's still a blend. So don't be surprised when you see monk fruit as a front of pack label kind of call out, and then read a little farther and realize that there's other ingredients too, because monk fruit has some downsides. One, it's very expensive to process, and two, it has a bitter flavor. So combining it with one of the OLs helps the flavor, it takes away some of the bitterness, and it makes it a lot easier in a 1-to-1 ratio when you're trying to cook. And so this one is really just the two items, the monk fruit extract and, of course, the erythritol. I've done a little bit of research on what happens with the monk fruit extract. And so a lot like this a lot like this vanilla extract that it's held in an oligosaccharide, same thing with the monk fruit. A lot of science going on in food because they basically grow a monk fruit, which is a root. They pulverize it, they dry it, they dehydrate it, and then they extract oils from it, and that's what they're using for the sugar alternative. So it's a lot of steps in that processing. And this is one of the newer ones that we found, and this one is xylitol. So it's a one ingredient sweetener. So right away you know it's an OL. In general, the xylitol has a really good flavor like erythritol. Again, it can sometimes cause GI upset, but what's nice is when you have a one ingredient sweetener, now you can use it and really see if you have any side effects versus the blends. Sometimes it's hard to know, well, what caused the trouble? So this helps us really identify the value of a non-nutritive sweetener, both in how it relates to a recipe and also how it relates to your GI tract. So, I think it's worth experimenting and finding one that you like. I think Heidi and I have kind of decided that Swerve is probably our favorite, both the granulated and the brown sugar version. And this will be the first time that we kind of blend these two in the dough of the keto cinnamon roll. So I'm excited to see how it's going to turn out. So yeah, I think it'll be really yummy. Did we forget the cinnamon, or did I just not?
The filling ingredients are down there.
Oh, down there. Okay.
Yeah, that'll be just for the filling.
Got it.
The only thing I forgot is the spray.
Okay, so maybe we can get the spray. Mary's going to help us. Thank you, Mary. All right, so let's start mixing.
Okay, we're going to start making our dough. Let's start with our dry ingredients. So we're going to grab the coconut flour, the almond flour, the ground flaxseed, our baking powder, our salt, and our sugar is going to count as a dry ingredient in this recipe. Actually, a lot of the time, sugar is actually considered a wet ingredient, like with cakes and cookies. But right now, it's going to be a dry ingredient. And then our xanthan gum. And of course, you guys know to pre-mix your dry ingredients.
Normal baking, you're right, Heidi. We do think of creaming the butter and the sugar together, and that's such an important component of really getting a good mix. And so I like the fact that every once in a while we have to break the rules and get a variation that will allow us to do a different product.
Mm-hmm. And then...
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, good thinking, Mary. Awesome.
And then, yeah?
I'm sorry, I wondered if you put the baking powder.
Yes, I did.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad she's checking on us.
Throw it all in a bowl.
Do we have to worry about the lumps in the almond, or is that okay?
It'll break up.
It'll break up.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted you guys to see. See, when it's mixed, I might have thought, gosh, do we have to worry about these lumps? But they're so powdery. This brand of almond flour.
It crumbles really easy.
And they vary a lot, right? The almond flours. This one is the HEB brand, and not that I'm giving a plug for HEB, but we've been really happy with this because it's a fairly fine grind, so it works so nicely. There's other flours that are almond flour that are more granular, and it really changes the quality of the recipe. So just be aware when you're venturing into grain-free cooking, almond flour varies a ton.
What is the fat content of the almond flour?
Pretty high. I don't know that answer right off, but I'm going to show you, Seema, in just a minute what our calories and breakdown.
80% good coconut flour.
Yes.
Almond flour is 80%
Hi-
fat.
Both, because it's coming from a nut. So, Seema, you're right. I mean, if we're looking at an almond and we're grinding it up and we're trying to use it as a flour, the macronutrient profile is hugely different. So, I love your point. Yes.
So all the look at eggs, they're all flaxseed. They are all
High in fat. And yeah, wait till I unfold the calorie level. Because remember, when we get into this, you go ahead and start mixing. I'll just chat about the ideas. When we get into the keto style, we're taking out sugar, but it's not necessarily low calorie. And that's what Seema is making a really good note of. Low calorie does not equate to using a grain-free flour blend, because the almonds and the coconut and the hazelnut and the quinoa flour, all those that I like to use here, are definitely high nutrient, which also means definitely high calorie. Yeah. All right, so now she's blending in all the wet ingredients. She's putting them in a nice little puddle, and I want to tip the bowl so you can see how pretty that is. These are the kind of pictures I love. If you go onto Instagram, I love the quick version. Look how pretty all that is. So all those colors of the rich nutrients and fats that we're adding to the recipe. And now, remember how I showed you kind of fold counterclockwise from the edge to the center. She's got beautiful form. We're just folding in. You could pre-whip the eggs. That would be probably a great standard. But we kind of like just to show you what a home style might look like. You could use hand mixers, beautiful option. What I've said in the past is we never want to underestimate the value of a big bowl. So we always go big. If you don't already have a bowl this size, get it for Christmas. Treat yourself, because not only is it really fun, but it also makes sure that you have plenty of room for that counterclockwise rotation and really just folding in all of your beautiful ingredients. And Heidi, when you do this one in our bakery, do you use the KitchenAid or do you use the big Hobart mixer?
Honestly, I usually just do it by hand, and by hand, I mean I'll start it with a spatula, and I usually put a glove on and just
Mix
like
it.
I did last week with my vegan cinnamon rolls, is just finish it up by hand. That's the way I like to do it, but you can use whatever way that you think works best.
Well, I love it that even the professionals really like to get in close with the foods. I think that's so important. If we, there's nothing wrong with using the KitchenAid, but especially when it's a fairly new recipe, getting to fold it, you get to understand how the ingredients mix together and just understanding the science of our product. That knowledge is so invaluable, because when you are doing some food science, you start to know what you're looking for in the profile of the dough.
Yeah.
You also use melted butter on this rather than just soft.
Yes.
Right? Is there a reasoning behind that, or just?
Honestly, it's just because it's easier to
It's
mix
easier to
in when
mix
it's
it,
all the
okay.
way melted.
All right.
Yeah.
But you bring up a great question. Using melted butter sometimes will change a recipe in a bad way. So if you're making Toll House chocolate chip cookies, right, and you use melted butter, it ruins the texture of the cookie. And so that little bit of science to me is so much fun, because why is that? Well, because when it gets into the oven, if those particles of fat wrapped around the flour are the wrong texture, it's going to change how it melts in the oven and it really cooks to the product. So we are doing research even now on how to get our Happy Baby cookie crispy and not flow. Well, temperature and texture makes a big difference.
So there is our finished dough. And what we're going to do now is we'll just grab a portion of this and we're going to roll it much the same way we rolled, at least starting, rolled our vegan cinnamon rolls last week. But then we'll do something that makes the finished products look different than our vegans.
Yeah, what I love is this one doesn't have yeast, and so it makes it a little bit more simple. You know, we are so much at the mercy of that beautiful little yeast bug that has to breathe and grow and behave and eat so that it comes out just right. And with this one, it's a little bit more forgiving because it doesn't have that.
Yes, that is very true. So this is like a 4 times batch that I just mixed up. So I'm going to grab about a quarter of it, put it on my sprayed parchment paper.
I'll put it on this side so you can see it better.
Yeah. So I have my parchment paper sprayed with cooking spray. I'm going to fold it over.
I'd be excited to know if any of you tried this recipe at home with the vegan one. And so you'll have to share with me if it...
I almost did, but I couldn't find those other
Oh, I got you. You were trying.
This whole thing you're doing.
Yeah, you're going to love it. And
Sizing it up and everything.
This
Great
method of rolling, it really simplifies
yeah,
the process. So, and again, I have my handy rolling pin that already has the measurements measured out, but that's okay if you don't. It would be about a quarter of an inch that you would want to go down to.
and I got to say, Heidi, you make this look easy because I was doing it for the evening class and it didn't turn out quite as pretty. And, you know, so don't be afraid if it doesn't look like the masters. It's really so much of a trial and error. And even if it's not pretty and perfect, they still taste really good. Yes, and remember how we cut off the edges and keep forming it? We had a public cooking class at Powerhouse Bakery, and we had 4 visitors that came in and worked with this too. I just posted some of the pictures, and it was so fun because 2 of them were cancer survivors, and they had a blast getting to experiment with the vegan dough and the yeast dough.
And again, this dough is easy to work with, especially when you have the parchment and the cooking spray. And like I did, I rolled it out and I had my bits on the end. You just patch it right up and you just go over it again. And you're aiming for a rectangular shape of sorts. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect.
And Heidi, if we wanted to, could we replace this red bar with a different color to make it taller or thinner?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
If you get a rolling pin like this, it will come with a couple different
Yeah.
sizes. I can unscrew the end and put
Yes.
different size little
Rings
on here. These are super handy. It
Yes.
takes some of the guesswork out.
Yeah, because when you rolled it right there, it was free. It wasn't really touching the dough. And it really helped the girls on the other class to make sure that the thickness was right. Yeah, I love it. So what do you think? Could we ever add filling to this? If other than the cinnamon, what if we were to put apples or...
Oh, for sure. I mean, berry fillings would be great. Those are definitely, a low sugar option.
So we might get away from the keto in that it has some natural sugar, but we're bumping up the volume of the antioxidants. So we're taking out the refined sugars and we could add in some of the antioxidant power. So you could do dried fruit, you could do nuts, and of course you could do fresh fruit that's chopped.
Okay, I don't think I'm going to lift this for you to see, but it's a pretty good rectangle. Now I'm going to lift the top, put it back down, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put this open end facing me.
Remember, this was the trick we had to
There we
do
go.
last time to get that beautiful...
Now carefully unload, undo the top. And now we're going to do our filling, which is a typical cinnamon filling. So we have butter, regular butter. We have some zero sweetener brown sugar alternative.
The same one as the Swerve.
Yep.
And cinnamon!
Lots of
Remember, it was
cinnamon.
so much cinnamon for the vegan one. Same thing here. So Heidi keeps reminding me that we need a lot of cinnamon in Powerhouse Bakery. We're always running out. So we are going to get more cinnamon. But I love being able to replace sweetness with another flavor. So you guys have heard me talk about that a lot. So in this one, we have a really high quality vanilla extract, which again is that beautiful emulsion. And then we have lots of cinnamon. We could use the sweet spice if we wanted to, and that would add in allspice and cloves and star anise. Or you could just put some apples in here and make it a fantastic apple cinnamon roll. And while it might lose its keto quality, it's increasing its antioxidant quality. Yeah.
And we're going to grab one of these, or you can just use a tablespoon measure. And it's about 4 to 5.
So
honestly, as long as it's well covered. Let's see, I've got an offset spatula.
Oh, I have this one. Do you want, Autumn, would you mind getting us an offset? Thank you so much. So in this scoop, is this a tablespoon and a half?
I believe this is, tablespoon and a half.
Yeah, I thought so.
Once you'll spread it out, and you just want to make sure it's evenly covered, get all the edges, and then at the bottom you leave about an inch or so without any filling, because that's going to allow your roll to stick together just with the dough.
Can you tilt that up and show them just a little bit? Yeah. There we go. So see how it's okay that it's not perfectly straight, but she's left herself a little channel there. Yeah. And then when she does the jelly roll fashion, it'll have enough room to close over on that side. And if you don't have an offset, you could easily use a regular spatula.
Yeah, spatula, spoon.
Just spreading it across.
Yeah.
And this is fairly thick. Thank you so much. Oh, one that we use for decorating the cakes. It's a little offset, little metal one.
Up on the wall. Oh, that's
Sorry.
Okay.
But I love how thick this is too. So it makes it really nice. It kind of sticks in place when the cinnamon rolls are cooking. So I like the texture of it.
And the texture will actually depend on how much you melt your butter down. If you don't melt your butter all the way,
it's even thicker.
But if you have it nice and melted and hot, it will be thinner.
Good point.
So whatever way is easier for you to work with. I like it a little bit thicker, but not too thick.
Yeah. Yeah, if you had it all the way, if you had solid butter, it would not mix as well too, probably.
No, it wouldn't. And it would be really hard to spread on your nice soft dough.
Yes. Yeah, so the dough, is it softer than the vegan one?
Yeah, I would say it is.
Mm-hmm.
With all that egg and...
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. I'm going to use this little guy. Spread it out. And actually, this is hardened a little bit more than I prefer, but...
Yeah.
Okay.
It almost looks chocolatey, doesn't it? That's because of all the cinnamon. So while she's spreading that and making it look so delicious, I'm going to spin this around so you can see the nutrition comparison. So as we look at the beautiful dough, and as Seema mentioned, when we look at our keto version, we look through the macronutrients, and it's quite different than the vegan. So the calories are not too far off, maybe about 70 calories more in the sugar-free. So when I have somebody come in and say they have a weight loss goal and they're going to follow keto, I'm a little nervous because of exactly what Seema mentioned. It's definitely going to be higher in fat. And honestly, that's why some folks have a hard time with keto, because it causes their blood fats to elevate. Not with everybody, but with a significant amount of folks, it does cause some trouble. Because look at the difference here. In our vegan version, we had 4 grams of fat. In the sugar-free version, the fat is 34 grams, so really significant. And then when we look at sugars, of course, 24 grams and 2 grams. So of course, when we're adding just a tiny bit of sugar to the dough versus using the non-nutritive sweetener, it certainly makes a difference. And look at this too for the fiber. 5 grams of fiber in the sugar-free, and still we're getting 3 grams of fiber in the vegan option. So, sometimes when we're looking at sugar-free, we want to subtract the fiber grams from the total carbs to give us net carbs. And so sometimes that gives us a little more wiggle room. But, using these flours that are high in nutrients and also fiber and fat is really showcasing here. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. But what I want us to do is have Heidi roll this up into a beautiful jelly roll that we're going to then cut and bake. Yeah, per serving. So I don't know how much each of them weighs, but we'll show you what they look like.
So we're going to start, again, by just using the jelly roll method that we use on our other cinnamon rolls. And I'm going to be slowly pulling this with one of my hands, and then with my other hand, I just kind of slide my finger to kind of start that nice tight roll. I'll give it another little pull, and I'm going to just kind of tuck down that roll, pull, tuck down.
And this is the technique that it looks easy, but it was not that easy when I had folks try it. Because, yeah, she's a pro. But what she's doing is using the paper to create some tension on the jelly roll. So when we are cutting the cinnamon rolls, we want them to be about 2 inches in length. Sometimes you're going to get a little extra at the end. So the 2 inches isn't obligatory, but if you have a way to measure so at least they're all the same thickness, they're going to cook a lot better. So whether it's 2 or maybe 2 and an eighth inch in diameter, and then we cut them halfway through and then flipped them to make this cute little design. But you can also keep them in a regular roll and cook them off just like this. So it's 400 degrees for about 8 minutes in a convection oven. Yeah. And so this would be the recipe, and it makes it, it's always extra too. And we do this little dollop on each one with a piping bag. We always have extra. So, you know, you can really mitigate how much extra calories you add on it with, you know, how much frosting you put on there. Because, of course, the sour cream and the butter, those all add. And these calculations are not counting the frosting. So you have to add a little bit more for that.
Honestly, I love just the baked cinnamon roll, even without the frosting. I think it's just delicious even in itself. But I know for some people that cream cheese frosting is just the icing on the cake. So, of course, that's delicious.
It's so good. And, you know, when we do a keto cake, I always love to add lemon. I just love the addition of a lemon. Squeeze a fresh lemon or some zest. You could also add almond extract. That's kind of a nice one. But you know what? It tastes delicious just plain too. So, you know, you get to have lots of variation with that. And again, if you don't have a piping bag, you certainly don't need to do this little flour. You know, we also just take a little dollop. Our scooper too. What do we do with our, this guy? It's even kind of cute to use this in our frosting and just do a little scoop on it. You know, it just looks beautiful that way. So lots of variations to make it. And really in closing, what I wanted to do was remind us that sugar is really a culprit in so many lifestyle diseases. And so the more we learn ways to cut out sugar, the better. And we always think about meeting people where they are. So if you're already pretty advanced, when I know a lot of you diva and dudes really are, and you've learned ways to cut out sugar, this becomes sort of a extra treat. But even when we're not in our holiday experiences, we want to think of ways to cut down on sugar. And oftentimes it's those insidious spots that you feel like you don't really do it that often, but they add up. For example, if you love having sweetener in your coffee or your tea, start there. See if you can commit to training your palate to like the flavor of unsweet. Don't necessarily go to a non-nutritive sweetener first. See if you can go lower and lower in regular sugar on those favorite items that you enjoy every day. This becomes then a special treat, and I promise you your palate will be a lot more sensitive, and so you'll need less sweetener when you use it less often. An interesting little observation that I've had over the years is when Sweet and Low, you know, the pink packet, started becoming available everywhere, people would oftentimes start with one, and then they'd have 2 and 3 and 4 because their palate got sort of acclimated to one packet of Sweet and Low. And so now just keep that thought in your mind. If you know of anybody that has Sweet and Low, which is 15 times sweeter than sugar, yet they want 2 or 3 or 4 packets. So in fact, just the other morning, and I was in Starbucks line and I heard somebody ordering ahead, they wanted 4 packets of Splenda in their latte. And if we did that same sweetness comparison to regular sugar, the sweetness concentration would be, you know, exponentially higher. So the messaging here is that I want you to train your palates to like flavors other than sweet. Then when you have an occasional treat that has no sugar, it's going to be really sweet to you and you'll enjoy it less. You'll enjoy less of the sugar. I hope you enjoy it more, of course. But you want to make sure that you have as little diet sweeteners as possible, and of course, as less sugar as possible too. So let's sample our keto cinnamon rolls, and hope you have a wonderful holiday, and let me know if you try this recipe at home and how it turns out for you. Thank you, Heidi, so much for helping us.